Okay, hi everybody. It's Joe Cioffi here on this Wednesday, and we've got the next Tropical Storm Irma. The Hurricane Center actually did this before I came on the air today, which was nice. Saved me the trouble. It's at 16.4 north, 30.3 west. With top winds of 50 miles an hour, and their logic is basically to take it basically on a westerly course. It may go north of west for a while and then go south of west for a while, ultimately winding up about 600 miles east of the northern Leeward Islands by Monday as a Category 2 hurricane. At least that's their forecast. It may wind up getting there faster in terms of strength. The speed I kind of go along with the idea. This is going to take. We're going to be watching this for quite a while. So just get used to it. In the meantime, you have no audio? Please tell me you have audio. Okay, you got audio because I hear it. All right. So the other thing is, with regards to this, the Gulf of Mexico, pressures are going to be low in the Gulf of Mexico late this week, through this weekend, into early next week. And there is a possibility of another tropical system developing in the western Gulf of Mexico over the weekend and early next week, which is the absolute last thing that Texas, East Texas, and South and Southeast Texas needs right now, with Harvey just finally beginning to pull away to the northeast. So, we're going to be paying attention to that. There's a lot going on. The remnants of Harvey, how much of that remnant moisture is going to survive as it moves toward the west side of the Appalachians and then eventually tries to redevelop along for the northern mid-Atlantic and northeast over the weekend. We've got a cool air mass coming down at the end of the week. We've got another one coming for the middle of next week. So very, very busy weather pattern here as we go into the end of August and into early September. And of course, Irma is going to be in this equation somewhere, and we'll be taking a look at that. So let's get going with the weather part of the show today, and then we'll come back at the end and we'll talk for just a little bit. We're going to start with the new tropical storm Irma, which has developed this morning just to the south and west, the west-southwest of the Cabo Verde Islands, which are right here. This is a really well-developed system that we're seeing. You can see here the core of the circulation is well defined. There are some high and cold cloud tops indicated with the bright red. The center looks like it's roughly at about 15.5 north, 16 north, and around 30 or 31 west, moving on a course to the west or west-northwest. And as quickly as this is developed, I'm thinking that this may wind up becoming a hurricane over the next couple of days. Without too much difficulty. And actually, when we look at the water vapor imagery loop, very interesting what's happened. The upper low that was sitting out in the Atlantic has weakened considerably and has moved away to the northeast. So as that continues to lift up and out, it's going to create conditions favorable for gradual strengthening. And you can see the edge of Irma now coming into view here on the water vapor imagery as well. So everything seems to be indicating that this thing could become a hurricane and maybe even a major one at that. So we'll see how it goes over the next 5 to 7 days, because this thing is going to be around for a while. The hurricane model forecast tracks for this are generally, interestingly, they're west-northwest, and then they Harvey, which is inland in southwest Louisiana. You can see the nor'easter on the GFS is offshore now. We still have actually a little bit of wind here where I am, but weather conditions are improving. Now, one of the things that happens when storms go up the west side of the Appalachians is that if there's not a good, strong, I say good, I mean strong, if there's not a strong upper air system in the jet stream, it could wind up spending all its moisture west of the mountains, and not that much of it translates eastward. That's kind of what the GFS does with this. It brings a low up into southeast Ohio, attempts to redevelop it to some degree along the Delaware coast. You can see how the isobars are. They're southwest and southeast and east. So there's some kind of weak low that's there in southern New Jersey. This is overnight Saturday at 2 a.m. And then that goes out, and then weather conditions improve as we move through Sunday and into Labor Day. Labor Day looks like a nice warm day with temperatures up into the upper 70s and low 80s. The other thing I want to point out is that in the Gulf of Mexico, pressures are going to remain low, especially in the Southwest Gulf. And weather models are indicating that in another 3 days, low pressure is going to try to develop in the Southwest Gulf. So it's quite possible that we could have another tropical depression or perhaps a tropical storm, depending on where it is in the Southwest Gulf by early next week. So this is something I think the folks in the on the Gulf Coast are going to really be concerned about if there was another big surge of heavy rain. And remember, we don't need this to be anything other than this could be a weak system. It doesn't have to develop into anything substantial in terms of tropical storm or hurricane strength in order for it to pour in tons of moisture, and you're going to have huge additional problems. And you'll notice too that the GFS actually sits it there for a couple of days as we go into the long range, and then Irma bursts onto the scene on this model. The GFS is the furthest east of all the models with regards to this. The European is much further to the south. As we take a look, I'm going to just put the anomaly map on here, and I'll widen out the view. The European has all along for the last several days, the European has had a much bigger high building out in the Atlantic. The entire Atlantic Ocean is basically under high pressure here. And you can see it there on the European in the long range as it goes north of Puerto Rico. And it also wants to take the system in the Gulf of Mexico to the northeast eventually. So that adds a complication if that's right. So again, this is very speculative at this point. But here's the European. And by the way, the trough here in the eastern part of the United States is not nearly as deep as what it's been showing for the last few days. But this is going to be the key here, I believe, is going to be the strength of the upper high, because that will ultimately determine how far west Irma gets. And of course, if something forms in the Gulf of Mexico, then that will also probably add to some forecast complications here in the longer term. So I'm going to have a lot to look at here over the next several days. The other thing, I just want to go back to the GFS for a second. As far as the northeast weather is concerned, we still have, everything seems to be on schedule with regards to the next couple of days. You've got a cold front right here coming through here tomorrow evening with this big high building down to the north, a shot of cool air. The model is not nearly as bullish with the cool shot now, although it does get very cool up in northern New England. But we're still going to get a solid shot of cool air here coming in a little bit faster for Friday morning and into Friday and Saturday. And then the high holds in, and you can see what happens with that, the remnants of Harvey, at least on this particular model. And I think that's something that we're going to have to consider, that maybe that most of the moisture with Harvey will just get left behind and spent out, and we won't get too much of that. And then we have another front here that approaches on next Tuesday night with another big high and shot of cool air coming into the northeast for the middle and latter part of next week. And of course, there's Irma on the scene, and you can see it actually takes it up and out east of 70 degrees west, which is what the GFS has been doing for a number of days now. But I honestly think all bets are off until we know what the strength of that ridge is that's going to be building out in the Atlantic. Harvey, meanwhile, is inland, and you can see it here, that core of very heavy rains in southeast Texas, although Houston did get out of that rain during the overnight. Much of the rain is concentrated to the northeast of the Houston-Galveston corridor, and it's moving now steadily to the north-northeast. So this should start to pull away slowly but surely over the next 24 to 36 hours. Here's the latest Lake Charles radar, and you can see Houston-Galveston out of it for the most part, but getting pounded with heavy rains, 2 feet of rain in Port Arthur in 24 hours. There isn't too much happening east of Lake Charles in southern Louisiana, some bands of rain there. So it's in this particular area that they're getting hammered with right now. The center moving northeastward, and gradually this is going to start to pull away, and that heavier rain will start to move into the northwestern part of Louisiana and northeastern Texas. And as far as we're concerned, well, before we even get to that, these are the the Doppler radar estimates. The area of 25 plus inches of rain has really expanded quite a bit. We'll go to the Lake Charles Doppler, and that 25 inch plus goes into southwestern Louisiana. But you can see the amounts do lessen somewhat, although they did have every bit of a foot of rain as you go east toward Lafayette, New Iberia, and so on. And we'll look at New Orleans. New Orleans wound up, there's generally 4 to 6 inches of rain throughout much of southeastern Louisiana, which is formidable, but compared to what it could have been, much more manageable, obviously, with what went on. So we're going to just end it right here with Irma. You can see it on the latest loop. I'll freshen it up for you. Well, that's the latest loop. Well-defined. Okay, so I'm back here. Hang on one second. I just want to bring you guys back up on the screen, and I have, so I can see what your comments are. Sorry about that little technical glitch in the middle. I think that was really due to the fact that we had been having, I guess, some wireless issues around here lately. But Marquise brings up a question about the water temperatures too cool now to be a hurricane in the Atlantic Ocean. Actually, the opposite is true. The water temperatures reach their peak the last 2 weeks of August, first week of September. Water temperatures lag the atmosphere. You have the solar cycle, and then you have the warming that occurs with the seasons. The coldest part of the winter is usually, is the 6 weeks after we get the shortest day of the year. And we also have a lag when it comes to water temperatures. We usually see the coldest water temperatures around February. It just takes, the ocean takes longer to warm and longer to cool. So it kind of lags, everything lags a bit. And we are right now, for example, up where I am, water temperatures are in the mid to upper 70s. So we're at the peak of what water temperatures get across the Atlantic. And don't forget, the rays of the sun, the direct rays of the sun now, as the sun gets closer and closer to the equator, is the warmth across the tropics between 0 and 10 degrees north is substantial. Sun is very strong there. So the water temperatures are not a particular problem, although in that part of the Atlantic they're not especially warm. They are in the lower 80s. It's only when they get west of 60 degrees west that you start to get to water temperatures at 85, 86, and maybe even a few pockets higher than that. And you wind up with, that's where you would probably see a storm like this achieve perhaps Category 3 status, assuming that all the other conditions in the atmosphere are ripe for development. Let's see, what else do we got? Gulf air holds more moisture than Atlantic air. Well, it's a tropical environment there, so the moisture is going to be solid. I would just say that that I would include the Atlantic south of 30 degrees north in that equation. But that's not to say that you couldn't certainly get heavy rains, substantial rainfalls and ridiculous amounts north of there. Just the setups have to be a little bit different. And it may wind up involving some sort of upper air system getting involved as well. Junior Celestin, will Irma be any threat to the Caribbean? I kind of think this will go north of the Leewards. you know, it's the way that the ridge is setting up and where the storm is already at 15 degrees north. If it was down around 9 or 10 degrees north, I might be a little more concerned about it, but it's up already at 15. So I'm thinking I don't think it's going to go into the Caribbean. I think this is going to go north of the Leeward Islands, or maybe just north of the Leeward Islands, but not further south than that. Aberdeen, very cool in the northeast. And certainly today on the backside of this nor'easter, plus the fact that it's taking a while for the sun to get going. So, yes, indeed, a cool day underway here. Again, the other thing I want to just emphasize the fact is that the last thing anyone needs to see is another tropical system in the Gulf of Mexico, in the western Gulf of Mexico. Harvey is just now pulling out. And remember, it does. I want to emphasize too. It doesn't have to be anything more than a tropical. Even a tropical wave would be problematic. So if there's a tropical depression or a weak tropical storm, we've had many in the past that have produced substantial and in some cases incredible amounts of rain. Doesn't have to be a hurricane. So we're going to watch that situation play out, because that could be, this was catastrophic for Southeast Texas. So anything more is just really adding insult to a very injured area. Good morning to Dio, Steve Audi. If it goes north of the Leewards, Leewards can't get well. Steve, if the ridge in the Atlantic is very strong and the trough in the east is weaker than forecast, I wouldn't rule it out. Crossing the Bahamas, and going and just keep moving westward. I don't think it's impossible, but we're at the point here so early in the game that we are everything, including recurvature out to sea, is still on the table. I'm going to pull up. I got the Eastern Satellite, so why don't we take a look at that? The East Atlantic Satellite. Hang on one second. And let me find it. Okay, is that it? There we go. So here's the loop from this is from the European satellite, which is great because it's a clean loop, and you can see the African coast. It's west southwest of the Cabo Verde Islands, which are right here. And look how well developed this is in terms of structure. It's already a tropical storm. It's developed fairly rapidly. You've got a well-defined core right here, and it's chugging along at about 11 or 12 knots from the west-northwest. And by the way, for those of you who are interested in tropical weather and how you can see these tropical waves, these waves moving across Africa and moving out. Most of them are really weak and don't do very much, but it looks like there's something substantial just coming to the edge of the picture here in Central Africa and moving westward. So that'll be coming off the African coast in a couple of days, and we'll see if what that looks like when that happens. But this system is it's very large and very well developed and moving along to the west-northwest. So at least so far, it's very impressive. And then the other thing with respect to the conditions aloft, just notice the fact that, if you remember back from yesterday, the upper low that was out in the Atlantic, it's much weaker, and it looks like it's lifting up to the northeast. And you can see Irma coming into the edge of the picture. It should be there. Okay, so I have it set correctly. But you can see Irma right here. On the water vapor imagery. Also, the Hurricane Center does point out that there's some dry air out in the Atlantic, so that might slow strengthening down just a bit. And nope, this is the old water temperature image, and it's not. I'm not going to be able to update right now. Let me go back to. Let's go back to the. Tropical satellite. So, with this upper low weakening, at least from the standpoint of the upper air winds, they will be much more favorable for development. Again, the dry air here is a bit of a concern in that it may slow the intensification process down. It's not going to stop it, but it may slow it down for a little while until it gets far enough west. So, looking at this, I think the system is going to be a substantial one over time. And looking at the northeast, why don't we take a look at our weather here at the moment? Here's that nor'easter offshore. It's really developing into quite the gale center. And by the way, look up southeast of Newfoundland. There's also a pretty wrapped up low over there too. So you've got Harvey, you've got the nor'easter that developed yesterday and is now continuing to move east-northeast, south of Nova Scotia and eventually south of Newfoundland. And here's one that is now southeast of Newfoundland, moving away. So very active here. One tropical system and two non-tropical systems. Very active satellite view here for the end of August and for the beginning of September. Irma does have a nice, well-developed. It is well developed. Gary Snell, I agree with you. Steve Addy, developed fast like Harvey. So are we over our temperature threshold? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out the beginning of that question. Hang on. Let me just back up a little bit. I'll make sure I didn't miss anybody. Cullen, welcome. I'll go in order here. Ever since the last severe weather outbreak last week, it's been fairly chilly at night in 50s. Yeah, I'm liking that too. And we're going to have some more chilly nights ahead. Matt Wilson, in my experience, is it normal to have a 2 for this time of year? I assume by a 2 for you mean 2 storms at the same time. It does happen. I don't know that I would call it normal, but in an active season, you are going to have 2 or 3. On rare occasions, we've had 4 or 5. I think there was one point back in 2005. I think we had 6 of them running around all at the same time. Lidl Griffin, weather pattern memory. Well, things do like to repeat. It doesn't always repeat exactly, but let's say, but history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And if something comes out of the Western Gulf again, I wouldn't be surprised. 2 more waves behind Irma. Yeah, well, we saw the first one coming into the edge of that picture, Martin. So we'll see what that does. But let's take them one at a time. Let's not get wrapped up too much in what isn't there yet. Developed fast like Harvey. So are we over a water temperature threshold? Well, okay, now I understand where you're getting with this. All right. The initial development is quick. The water temperatures there are warm, but they're not overly warm. They're only probably just over the threshold, a little bit over the threshold for tropical storm strength, but not quite to the threshold of a hurricane. But I guess the dynamics aloft were so favorable that it allowed the system to really get going rather quickly. And yeah, so there is a little dry air out there, so we're going to see what kind of an effect that has. And, by the way, what's there now may not necessarily be there in a day or two. Marquise is going to Houston on September 1st until the 3rd. I signed up to the Red Cross, won't be watching your live show. Good for you, Marquise. That's great that you're, donating your time. Those folks there need a ton of help. I more meant 2 impacts of tropical storms at same location. Oh, okay. It would be unusual. Yeah, it has happened. It has happened on several occasions in the East. I believe it was in 55. You had Connie and Diane move into the Carolinas 4 days apart. So it does happen every once in a while. Thankfully, it doesn't happen very often that you get impacts in that short a time frame. There have been a number of years where you'll get impacts with several weeks in between. To have them within a 5 to 7 day time frame is rare, but it does happen on occasion. Rain in Boston, you got that nice cool shot, Delvin, coming down, so you're going to be enjoying that coming down for Thursday night into Saturday morning. All right, folks, I'm going to wrap it up at this point. Thanks everybody for being here today. And again, I apologize for that. That at least was not my, bad hand in a switching error. That was, I guess there's some weird stuff going on with the wireless signal here. I got some posts up on the website at meteorologistjoecioffi.com, so check those out. And we will, I'm going to need a little bit of a break here. So I don't know if I'm going to live stream when I get home tonight. I don't know that much will have changed. But I'll leave the option open. If there's something for me to talk about, maybe I'll do a short one. Otherwise, we'll see you around this time tomorrow. And no, Raymond, it's too early for the lake effect machine to get turned on. You guys are already looking for the snow belts to get working. Let's get into September first. Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for being here, and thanks to everybody for being here. I'll schedule the next one up. So you'll get notified when I do come on. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.